Good morning, everyone. This is Servium calling. Welcome to the next in our series of INOOT webinars. I need one of those. My name is Steve Dawes. I'm the Services Director here at Servium, and I'm your host today. And the whole purpose of our webinar series is to educate and inform you as our customers around some groundbreaking technologies, disruptive tech, to help you make informed decisions. And today, we're joined by Arcserve, and I'd like to introduce Paul Brunyee from Arcserve. Morning, Paul.
Good morning, Steve. Morning, everybody.
Thanks for taking the time to join us today. And Paul's going to talk today as our subject matter expert around some of the innovative features around the Arcserve backup proposition. So thanks again, Paul. As usual, we will be taking questions and answers at the end. So I like to put people like Paul on the spot. So there is a Q&A panel at the top. We'll take a poll at the end. We're using Zoom to broadcast this today, and there will be a recording as well. Once we've completed the webinar, then for all you people who have attended today, there is the prize draw, and one of my colleagues, Guy Sumner, will be helping me do the prize draw right at the end of the webinar today. So let's look at Friday, the 12th of June. Let's see what's happened in history. I always like to look back and reflect a little bit. So 1929, Anne Frank was born, famous for age 13. The German-born Dutch Jewish national, and the family went into hiding in Amsterdam in 1942. 1954, not quite my era. Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock was originally released. For James Bond fans, 1967, You Only Live Twice, which was the fifth James Bond film, with Sean Connery. Interesting, the screenplay was by Roald Dahl. That was premiered in London. In 2010, the famous food critic Egon Ronay sadly died at age 94. Hopefully it wasn't something he'd eaten. And in 2016, Cristiano Ronaldo became the first footballer to top the Forbes highest paid athletes list, earning $88 million. So that's the 12th of June. More importantly to us, it's all about INOOT. So for the benefit of everyone who's not been on an INOOT before, a little bit of background on Servium before we get into the main session with Paul. So we're all about, as a business, providing you with essential IT solutions to your business problems. With a troubleshooter, we walk in your shoes. We put you at the center of everything we do. And we do that by providing exceptional account management. We deliver superb customer service. Our customer satisfaction surveys that we run every year always tell us how well we're performing, but we never become complacent. We have a superb services ecosystem as well of vendor partners such as Arcserve and so on that we can bring to the table. But the key thing is when we work with you on a requirement, a project, we work with you throughout the life cycle. From strategy design, implementation, support. But the most important thing to me, really, and probably the rest of the business, is the review stage. Now let's look at how the project went. Was it on time? Did it deliver to your expectations? And more importantly, within budget as well. So that whole cycle on our Pathfinder is, again, to help you get through the maze of technology these days. And you as our customers have access to a tremendous breadth and depth of technical resource. We have the scale to deliver that. And I think one of the most important things for me is the transparency of how we deliver our capabilities and the services that we do partner. Everyone in the industry does, but we're transparent. When we work with subject matter experts, such as Paul today, we'll tell you who we're working with and why. So I think the transparency is absolutely key in what we deliver. And from a services point of view, there's a lot we can do. And I encourage you to have a look at our YouTube channel, go and subscribe to it, see some of the detail that I delivered on a webinar early in the year, a bit more detail around our services ecosystem. But there's a lot of resource skills that we can bring to the table for you as our customers. And when we look at our Pathfinder, where does today fit? Really, okay, we're talking a lot about data and backup and so on, but I think one of the key things that Paul will go into is the security element of the Arcserve proposition. So a little bit of background there. Paul, I'll now hand over to you. The floor is all yours, sir.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Steve. And I feel enlightened knowing what happened previous years on this day. No, thanks for that. There's always something new to learn. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us on this INOOT series. So my name is Paul. I work for Arcserve, and I'm going to be talking about our vision, if you will, about a complete data protection approach, philosophy, way of thinking. Yeah, ransomware, cyber threats is going to form a thrust of what we talk about, but we're going to talk about a solution here. So hopefully if I can advance the actual screen. Here we go. Just to introduce Arcserve, some of you may already know of us, be working with us, which is fantastic. But just to recap very briefly, we have been in the market of protecting customers' data for about 37 years. We've got a huge amount of experience. We started life with a different name company, Cheyenne Software, back in the 80s, and been through various transformations and so on. But what we've done, what I found personally, I joined Arcserve about a year ago, is that we've looked to keep innovating, we've looked to keep abreast of what customers are actually looking to do, looking to use, looking to deploy to help them with their business operations. And what we do, one of our taglines is about protecting what's priceless, which is your data, your digital assets. But this whole world that we're in now has just changed. There's an infographic here that we use, and we talk about things that can happen in 1 single minute, and it's all about, you know, time is really key when every moment counts. So within 1 minute, for example, apparently 258 babies are born. In terms of Antarctica ice melts, 300,000 tons, quite a lot in 1 minute. Numbers of Coca-Colas consumed, 627,000. And perhaps more on the IT side, over 146 million emails are sent every minute. Why is that relevant? Why is that important? To be honest, this is just kind of really framing a discussion, and it's all about time. Time is of the essence, because how long would it take this person, this hacker, to access your systems, perhaps exfiltrate your data? You know, find something that's quite sensitive, find IP, who knows? What about how long would it take them to start encrypting files? Because we're hearing a lot about ransomware, particularly malicious ransomware that does encrypt files and then issues ransoms and so on and so forth. A lot of hackers these days are getting very sophisticated, and they're very adept at covering their tracks. How long would this take? How long would all of these take? And this is really the thrust of what our thinking is within Arcserve, and our thinking in that sort of wider sense with our friends at Servium. How do we provide that sort of broad protection to yourselves, to your data? So there's a statement here: data protection needs to be considered holistically, and we're very much of that mindset. And it needs to combine things such as advanced security, enhanced backup, together with constant education. And these are, if you like, 3 core pillars that we believe are really needed to provide that complete data protection. So we're going to just take a few moments looking at each of these in turn. So advanced security, and nobody can escape the fact that ransomware is in there. There's press headlines every day. It's not recent. Ransomware has been going on for quite a while, but it's been evolving. It's getting more sophisticated. Viruses and malware have been around for several decades now, but as opposed to a lone person dropping a particular virus, you know, trying to drop it on a particular environment, now it does involve a lot more sophistication. There's organized teams actually doing this out there, and some of you out there may have actually experienced this. You may have been on the receiving end, hopefully not, but the world evolves, the world changes, and so do these types of attack as these go forward. So how does ransomware work? There's all sorts of methods, and the ones that we may be most familiar with is sort of emails, unsolicited emails, or curious looking emails, or even text messages. They might send you a link and encourage you to press on a link. They might sort of masquerade as an official looking email from the C-levels within your organizations, from financial institutions, and so on and so forth. It's all about trickery, trying to get you to follow a particular link or to download a particular file, executable, whatever it might be. There's some websites that put up where as soon as you join the website, they draw you in with the purpose to download malicious code. We're seeing a rise now what's called malvertising, malicious advertising, and so on. Same sort of thing. It's all about trying to get people to download content into their environment, their data centers, their operating infrastructure, whatever it might be, that contains code which you don't really want in there. Social media is an area that cyber criminals are using more and more to learn and plan and prepare information about intended targets. And we're seeing now more recently that mobile apps are actually being used to basically transfer viruses and download viruses onto sort of laptop devices and so on. So there's a whole plethora of things out there that we've got to be mindful of, we've got to be aware of, and it's going on all around us. Now, most of our organizations will put in very robust defenses about this, but it's a constantly moving field that we've got to be prepared for. Those bad guys out there, they're not going to stop. Things like attacks on health service within the UK, they're increasing. Attacks on government institutions, particularly in the UK actually, is increasing. COVID-19 is no barrier to stop these people, these organisations pursuing their agenda, which is essentially to extort money. If we look back a few years, ransomware in 2017 really started taking a hold, as in it came to the forefront of a lot of people's thoughts. Viruses and malware has been around for many, many years, as I said before. But in 2017, we started to see some increasingly sophisticated engines, I'll call them. WannaCry is a big one. It hit the headlines. We're still seeing an awful lot of WannaCry attacks today. NotPetya, LockYServer. You may have heard of some of these. But a lot of times these were developed and then sent out into the market in what's called a spray and pray technique. Basically, just spray, cast wide and far, and hope that things land. Hope that actually things get hooked, and you know the malware then detonates, and so on and so forth. But it was to a large extent indiscriminate. Yes, we still had targeted phishing and so on. But if we wind the clock forwards to today, this year, 2020, we're finding ever more sophisticated and focused techniques are now being used. Very targeted phishing techniques, and there's some new names up there. You might have seen some of these on the left-hand side. Things like Maze. Maze is really a collective. And what they try to do is exfiltrate data, and they threaten to publish it in the public domain if ransom demands are not met. So it's not that they just encrypt data and you'll never get access to your data. They threaten to expose. So it's a different kind of way of thinking. It's a different way to try and galvanize people into paying ransom. There's a few there, and you can read about these. You may be well aware of those. But what we're actually finding now is that these are actually often distributed, managed, and so on by highly specialized teams, and quite often multiple teams. There might be teams of specialists who focus on gaining entry through and into an organization's IT infrastructure. There'll be another team of specialists that specialize in covering tracks, and so on and so forth. So it's getting highly sophisticated, and so so we need to be wary of this as well. And there's a couple of graphics on the right hand side that you can see trends are generally going upwards, and you can read all sorts of reports, you can find your truths. But I've been working in IT for quite a few years myself, and I've been being exposed to the security side of things in working with Arcserve, but also previous roles for quite some time. You know, this is with us. Ransomware is only going to get more prevalent. Whether it's an individual's laptop, you know, for home use that can be infected with ransomware, encryption-based ransomware, or whether it's our corporate assets within our organizations and data centers. The ransomware attacks all of these. So, common attack vectors. There's a few terms here, you may be familiar with them, but this is basically, well, how does ransomware get into an organization? This is a study that Sophos conducted. I'm going to open up all of these little tiles, and there's multiple ways in which ransomware actually comes into organizations. The three on the left hand side, so file downloads and emails, malicious links, remote attacks on servers, and then emails with attachments which people are encouraged to click on, and so on. They form the bulk of how malware, bad code, bad actors get access into our systems. RDP protocol is still not locked down in 9% of cases of these attacks. And you can see some of the others on the right-hand side. Misconfigured public cloud instances. We're still seeing instances, S3 buckets, being put up there with sensitive information that are unprotected. People work with third parties, with suppliers. They can wittingly allow access into organizations. And simple things like using USB keys that you don't know where it came from. You know, it reminds me of the Stuxnet attack on the Iranian nuclear enrichment facility, which was, I think about 11, 12 years ago. That was actually done through USB, but today we're still seeing a lot of attacks that way. So there's lots of different areas that we've got to be mindful about protecting ourselves. There's something called an attack chain. I put this graphic up from Lockheed Martin. I'm not going to go into detail on this. The attack chain for most attacks really consists of 5 core steps. There's an identification and reconnaissance phase. That these are what the bad guys are doing. They're just trying to look for a target to go for. It could be an organization, it could be a user. And then there is an initial attack, which could be initial payload delivery. It could be a browser exploit, you know, something that's vulnerable that's actually opened. It's a backdoor into a system in some way, shape or form. But the bad guys try to then create this command and control system. So essentially it's two-way communication from the bad guys external to wherever they are, you know, an organization, and then sort of code and whatnot that's actually allowing this communication flow to and from. A lot of these guys, once they're in an organization, try to spread laterally. They discover assets of high value if they can, you know, databases, particular files, whatever it might be. And they look to spread, it's called east-west, it's lateral movement within an organization to touch as many points as they can. And then they decide what the action is. Are they going to pull the data? Are they going to drop an encryption tool and start encrypting files? What are they going to do? I don't have the stats within this presentation about the Mandiant report, but I quite often refer to that, and it talks about the time taken from the breach of an organization's defense to when it's discovered. And from memory, it's now down to about 54 days in EMEA. It's almost 2 months on average that the bad guys have got access inside the system before it becomes noticed. That's on average. And then it's about 9 to 10 days to then remediate it, clean up, you know, shore up all the holes and so on. So, you know, there's a lot of steps involved here, and this is actually quite a complex sort of set of steps. But hence, this almost underpins my statement earlier that a lot of these guys are quite sophisticated. I'm not saying all of us are going to be attacked in this way, but we need to be prepared. We need to protect ourselves. So how do we? What is the mitigation? There's 3 core steps here that we talk about that we need to be mindful of, and you know, within your organizations, hopefully you're doing, you know, a lot or all of these. First of all, on the left hand side, let's stop the delivery. Let's stop ransomware for installing. And there's various techniques, sort of anti-exploit techniques, web security and so on, you know, firewalls, all this kind of security, which is great. First of all, try and stop it ever from installing. But
Paul, I think your mic's gone there.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Silent.
I'm silent? Ah,
yeah, you're back in the room. You're back in the room.
Oh my word. Okay. Oh, apologies for that, everybody. Here I am just talking away. Thanks for that, Steve. So the first act in terms of mitigating these attacks is to prevent delivery. The second one is, okay, if it gets past my security, stop it executing. Try and identify it and quarantine this ransomware, this bad code, before it even runs. And that's where you get anti-malware, antivirus engines, and it can perhaps employ things like deep learning, machine learning, and so on to identify ransomware before it runs. And then even if it actually starts running and starts encrypting, do you have mechanisms to actually stop that encryption process? There's a technology called CryptoGuard. There might be other technologies out there as well, but how do you actually stop that? So there's 3 steps of mitigation there. Now, if we just have a look at data protection and security overall, you've actually got a lot of things to think about, you know, presumably number of servers, endpoints, you might have consolidated NAS and SAN data stores, you might be running cloud workloads, SaaS workloads, and so on. There's a lot of things there. We consider security to be a first line of defense, and it should be there. We can protect our servers and we can protect our endpoints, and we put firewalls in and all sorts of threat mitigation, you know, ideally across all of those areas. And then we have a data recovery area. Now, I work for Arcserve, and that is our traditional area of data recovery, and we consider that to be the last line of defense, our backup and disaster recovery, and being able to support backup and data protection and recoverability across all of these areas, and that is where Arcserve comes in. But what we do is we look to basically bring all of these together. Now, data protection from an Arcserve point of view, this diagram is somewhat busy, I suppose, but it's a typical architecture that we can talk about. Now, if you can view this, the stack on the left-hand side that talks about Office 365, physical servers, virtual servers, this is your server and data estates over there. And you're going to have a mixture of all of these, I'd imagine, some of them subset, superset, whatever it might be. We have what we call UDP, Arcserve UDP, Unified Data Protection. It's our core backup and data protection solution, UDP, and it can be deployed in an appliance. The diagram shows an appliance. It actually shows two appliances here, but it can also be deployed in a software-only model, such that we provide the software, you install it on whatever servers, and we work with you to do all the correct sizing and so on and so forth. But what we do is we can implement one, we can implement multiple of these UDP solutions, UDP appliances, and these act as a focal point to help protect your data, pretty much irrespective of where the data is coming from. Physical, virtual, hypervisor, Office 365. We also have our own cloud. We also work with public cloud services such as AWS and from Amazon and Microsoft Azure. We can output elements to tape. We can take all these copies and we can move them around, take multiple copies and so on. UDP can be a core data protection solution for organization states, and as I said, that's where we have focused traditionally in the past. This is we as Arcserve, and we provide this unified data protection solution. We advocate using things like 3-2-1 best practice, and hopefully you will have heard of this in the data protection sphere. And we say that your data isn't truly protected if you're not performing these routine and redundant backups. So the 3-2-1 policy is essentially take at least 3 copies of your data. 2 copies may be local, but 1 must be offline, and then 1 copy must be off-site. It's all about additional insurance to basically make sure that if you are affected by anything, malware, ransomware, wherever it might be, we, using this policy, using UDP, for example, we can ensure that we can actually recover you, because we're storing and we're moving copies of data around different areas, different parts of the organization, offline copies, off-site copies, and so on. 3-2-1 is an industry best practice. It's not just from Arcserve, but we absolutely advocate this to our, to our clients and customers. Now, what we do, bringing all this together, I've talked about security and I've talked a little bit about data protection. We actually now have one platform where we bring data protection and security together. So it's data protection and security simplified. We work together with our partner Sophos and deliver a combined solution. So this is Arcserve UDP together with Sophos. And in this diagram, you can see that we have one of our Arcserve appliances with a little badge on the front saying powered by Sophos. And so we actually combine the first line of defense, security, the endpoint security with Sophos, together with the last line of defense, which is our Arcserve core UDP offering. This delivers how we describe as a ransomware-free IT infrastructure to support data protection. Do you remember I said previously, data protection needs to be considered holistically. It's both security, it's traditional or enhanced backup and recovery, and it's also education. So all of these environments that you can hopefully see on the left-hand side of the screen, we protect those using our core Arcserve UDP offering. Windows, Linux, hypervisor, physical, whatever it might be. You might be operating in some various cloud instances. You might have remote branch offices with some UDP in there as well. At Arcserve, we have our own cloud. We call it Cloud Hybrid. So this is data centers that we actually run ourselves and we manage them ourselves. And we layer Sophos on top of those as well, such that we're providing that security wrap, security bubble around this solution. Now, if I just talk about Sophos very briefly, the actual product from Sophos is called Sophos Intercept X Advanced for Server. It's a bit of a mouthful, but Intercept X is very advanced and sophisticated. We believe it's the leading endpoint security products in the market out there. And those 3 mitigation points that I described earlier, how do we prevent delivery? How can we prevent execution? How can we stop encryption? All of those features and more are included within the Intercept X product. So it contains anti-exploit and web security features. It has a deep learning engine. It's based upon neural network design. And it offers anti-malware, antivirus, anti-ransomware capability. It will quarantine it before it even runs. But if a new strain of ransomware comes out, because they're happening all the time, it actually is monitoring processes within that UDP sphere, the Arcserve appliance area, and it will recognize an encryption process. It actually does very clever things about taking shadow copies of files in its memory, spots the encryption process working, stops that, and then rolls the files back. It's a technology called CryptoGuard. And so what we have is a first line of defense, the Sophos Intercept X Advanced, and the last line of defense, Arcserve UDP, which is our software, and we roll it all together and we deliver that as a single platform solution. So the third pillar that we can't ignore is this one of customer education. Now, the need to educate our workforce on a constant basis is ever more important. We need to constantly reinforce and remind employees about the need to be cyber safe. A stat I heard last year said that within any organization, 4% of employees will click on phishing links. 4% will click on phishing links. And so that is one of the most prevalent forms that the bad actors, the bad code gets into organizations. And so we can put all of our safeguards on our firewalls and so on and so forth, but education is that key pillar as well. And if you have followed Servium's INOOT series, there was an INOOT webinar in series 2, which came out a short while ago, which talks about the human aspect of cybersecurity. Addressing the Human Cyber Risk by Sam Oliver from CyberSafe. And by all means, go to the Servium website and have a look at this, because Sam talks about the human bias in terms of making decisions within an organization, and this is relative to the cybersecurity. Very interesting sort of 30 minutes viewing if you actually choose to go down that route. So from my perspective, just in summary, we talk about how to move towards that sort of ransomware-free data protection solution. We believe, just to recap, it's a multifaceted approach. So it needs basically to consider enhanced data protection. So it might be things such as using better hygiene, using 3-2-1 best practices and so on. And I talked about that in context of the Arcserve UDP capability. Also use next generation anti-malware, anti-ransomware endpoint protection. So we partner with Sophos and we wrap that together in a single solution offering. You might want to consider things like better access control, multi-factor authentication. Better control over RDP protocols, some of those attack vectors I mentioned earlier on. But the last one I want to mention here, I want to end on, is do not forget the constant employee education and the constant reminding of people to train them to be cyber safe, because within the IT departments we can be as secure and so on as we possibly can be with all the latest and greatest products and guards and so on. But the thinking in the industry is that these perimeters, these securities will get breached at some point. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so we've got to constantly educate our people to be able to be cyber safe and to recognize that actually that looks a bit fishy. I'm going to check on that. I'm going to ask the IT department. I'm going to do something about it. Hey, if these things get through, we at Arcserve and we at Servium want to offer you the best means that we can at providing that complete data protection solution as far as we can. So hopefully that has actually resonated with everybody on the call today, and I'll say thank you very much for your attention with that, and I'm going to hand back to Steve now. Thank you, Steve.
That's great. Thank you very much, Paul. Great insight into the proposition and the security. It's quite unique, I think it's fair to say. So now it's time to put you on the spot, sir. So. Questions, feel free to ask them. They are anonymous, so that don't be shy. So there are a couple in, Paul, so I'll fire away. First one from John in relation to the Sophos licenses. Are they included in the solution, or are they licensed separately?
Yeah, thanks, John. We include Sophos within the appliance. The licenses are all included. You don't need to consider anything else. I just want to be clear about this. This is about putting Sophos endpoint security with the Arcserve UDP on the appliance itself. If you wanted to actually look to deploy Sophos elsewhere within your data center, absolutely fine. But we are focusing on securing that data backup repository, if you will. But yes, it's all included. Thank you.
Okay. Question from Chris. Does the Arcserve solution require an outside connection if only protecting local machines? When
you say outside connections, we we do need, I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure about the question there, but where we have a UDP within a data center, obviously it needs a network connection through to the particular endpoints that it is protecting and taking the backup images from. But we have, for example, agentless protection for hypervisor environments, for physical environments. We need to drop an agent on there, and then it's the agent that communicates back to the UDP instance, as it were, or multiple UDP instances, and then they talk between themselves and figure out what needs to be sent over that particular network. So we can operate over, in the wider sense, operate over the internet, operate over VPNs, but it's all encrypted transmissions as well.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, and Chris just confirmed that outside the network. A question from Lee: does this work in an offline environment?
When you say offline, it absolutely does. This is the security aspect together with the backup. So what we have is an appliance here. This is a self-contained, it's like a turnkey solution. The Sophos element is absolutely active, and it's monitoring. There's 25 known exploits that attackers must use to basically gain entry to a system. It's monitoring all of those constantly. So if you lose access to that from wherever you might be administering it from, no, it carries on, absolutely.
Okay, a question from Neural. Does this solution appliance also support backup to tape?
Yes, absolutely it does. Yes, and if you think about the kind of heritage and the pedigree from Arcserve, we actually first came to market sort of 35, 37 years ago with tape-based backup products, and we carried that forward to today. So yes, that's a long way of answering you. Absolutely, we do.
Yeah. Okay. A question from Jane: does the security components impact on the length of the backup window?
No, it doesn't. Now, this is interesting because we're getting down into the actual architectural design a little bit. And what we do is when we ingest data into the appliance, we don't scan it at ingest time because it would take too long to do that. But what we support is basically it's an offline scanning. So what we do is we ingest the data and we do all the compression and encryption, all that kind of good stuff. But then we do basically a post-process scan, or we can support post-process scans. And then there's many ways we can actually do that as well. So, and we've chosen to go down that route so it won't impact the actual backup times and the backup process itself.
Okay. Question from Adrian: how is the integration now with migration to tape? Because it used to be very clunky. So, any thoughts on that, Paul?
Okay, I apologize because I can't comment about what it was like in the past. I do apologize, but we're actually sending out a lot of solutions with additional network cards specifically for attachment to tape devices. So I haven't heard of any specific problems with that. I mean, I'll be very interested just to actually take that discussion offline to understand what the particular clunky problems were. But a lot of our customers are still using tape out from the actual appliance itself. And as far as I'm aware, it actually works successfully. It might be some particular tape library devices. Apologies, I honestly don't know. But I'm quite happy taking that conversation further if you wish. Okay.
No, that's great. Well, you can come out the spotlight now. Thanks. Thanks for that. It's always good to see how everyone reacts. So yeah, thanks for taking those, Paul. So I'd just like to thank you, Paul, for taking the time today. That's been really interesting. I'm going to launch the poll now. For everyone to, if they could, complete the poll, because partly to get feedback on the webinar today, but we've got a specific sort of call to action where if anyone is interested in knowing more and exploring in a bit more detail that you were sort of alluding to before, Paul, but from Adrian's question, for example, question 6 on the poll. If you are interested, please highlight it there, because anyone who then subsequently has a sort of one-to-one meeting with your account manager and Paul, or one of the technical people at Arcserve, then between us we'll put in £125 to a nominated charity of your choice. So for anyone who's interested, question 6, if you can highlight it there, we'll do a virtual one-to-one meeting, obviously, where we can do a much more of a detailed deep dive if you like. So £125 to a charity of your choice is what we will we'll provide. So Paul, thanks again. Appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you, Steve. You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Really, really good insight and some interesting features there. So again, hopefully that resonated with all our audience today. So while you complete the poll, I'll just talk about our next INOOT, which is in 2 weeks' time, 26th of June at 10 o'clock. Working from home theme this time, and we're partnering with Poly, formerly Plantronics, sort of working from home, making the most out of your remote working investment. So again, in these challenging times, you know, we all know the problems of working from home from an IT professional's perspective and the challenge that brings us. So 2 weeks today, that is with Poly.